So this is from a lovely Twitter account called Scumbelievable, which is, you know, good username. You picked a good one there. So the tweet is pretty safely state that Bin Laden and I did not agree on much, but blowing up the World Trade Center is probably the most principled and defensive thing he ever did, which is like, holy crap, that is a crazy thing to tweet. I invited her on the show tonight to argue about this with Connor and I, to which she responded by blocking me immediately. So I'm guessing that's a no. She doesn't want to come on the show.
She's riding the wave of attention and stupidity that's coming from people sympathizing with jihadism. Frankly, like I'm trying to be as tactful as I can right now, but I get really angry about it. Hassan cackling like a hyena when a female cop is shot by one of her partners.
Are you okay?
No, you shot me!
Oh, God! Are you okay?
That thought process extrapolated out to tens of thousands of young people where they're like, oh, police can be murdered and it's funny. Like it's funny when they die. It seems like some of the wildest, most popular creators, they are kind of built for not the least common denominator, but the average common denominator. If you're watching this in the future, that is fantastic. But Brianna Wu and we've been trying to build a show for a while. We are now officially doing it. This is our inaugural episode. We'll add in tech stuff and beautiful lighting and green screens and all sorts of stuff as we develop the show. But basically what we wanted to do, as far as I understand it, is we wanted to have somebody who was a little bit more right-wing and a little bit more left-wing, but not totally insane, break down the news stories of the week. And so we felt like that would be something good for humanity. So Brianna, do you want to introduce yourself to the people at home and maybe what your hopes are for the show?
100%. My name is Brianna Wu. Most people know me from Gamergate, but that was 10 years ago. Life moves on. I've moved on. I am Special Projects Director at Progressive Victory. I'm Executive Director at Rebellion PAC. I'm a former candidate for United States Congress. And yeah, my job is to kind of get out there and put my political principles into action. You may look around these days and say to yourself, hey, America's got a few problems, right? And one of the things I've learned in the last 10 years is politics is really more about forming coalitions than it is about crafting the perfect academic, theory of how change works. So what I found is people like Connor, in my view, I have more in common with Connor than I do some of the absolute fringe, in the sense like, Connor, you love your country, you love your family, you love democracy, you want to go out there. We have different people we vote for sometimes. At the end of the day, we want a lot of the same things with policy. So I thought it would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the goal, is to maybe not agree with each other on everything from a policy perspective or a descriptive perspective, or who the good guys and the bad guys are and to what degree and all that kind of stuff, but just have like an earnest conversation about the way that we perceive things. And obviously that can get a little bit spicy, especially with how absolutely messed up the entire internet sphere has been. As you were kind of mentioning before we even went live, is like, this has been I think one of the most insane weeks in online discourse in memory. Can you remember a more wild time on the internet? Maybe after 9/11 and I was like 13, or, you know.
The normies weren't on the internet on 9/11 in the same way. It was still mostly geeks. Like, it was 4chan message boards, but oh man, like ever since the boomers discovered the internet, it's just been downhill in my view.
Yeah, I saw a poll about Zoomer versus Boomer media literacy and internet literacy in particular, and I voted for Zoomers to be more illiterate than Boomers. But the truth is, I actually do think the Boomers are more media illiterate. I just think they kind of lucked out because they touched grass for like 4 decades before they got to the internet, whereas Zoomers are just like, they're lost in the sauce. So I don't think like Zoomers on a time scale will be worse. I just think that they're caught in the swirl.
I agree with that. They have a really sophisticated understanding of things like media manipulation and like spin and things like that. Like, they intuitively grasp the game, because they've grown up having to be performative 24/7. I think one of the things I see consistently, it's a blind spot in their analysis, is they assume everything is performative and nothing is quite real. I think there's a real cynicism for Gen Z that is it often gets in the way of their analysis.
Well, speaking of dramatic performativity, I think that's actually like a perfect segue into our first subject. You saw, I think everybody saw one of the most schizophrenic tweets in history, but it's kind of it's the tip of the iceberg of a real discourse online about whether or not like jihadism was justified or bin Laden was justified. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the Discord. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go to this screen, go live on it. And you're going to have to forgive me on some of the tech boomerisms and all that kind of stuff as we figure out the format. But chat, I appreciate your patience. You should be used to my tech boomerisms by now. And do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I'll go for it. So this is from a lovely Twitter account called Scumbelievable, which is, good username. You picked a good one there. So the tweet can pretty safely state that bin Laden and I did not agree on much, but blowing up the World Trade Center is probably the most principled and defensive thing he ever did. Which is like, holy crap, that is a crazy thing to tweet. And, I invited her on the show tonight to argue about this with Connor and I, to which she responded by blocking me immediately. So I'm guessing that's a no. She doesn't want to come on the show and basically talk about this. So, I guess first thoughts on this before we get into her longer history of pure crazy.
My first thoughts are reading it again is that like she's riding the wave of attention and stupidity that's coming from people sympathizing with jihadism. And there's this like South Park joke where they talk about it, like HIV AIDS, and they talk about like, when is it okay to joke about it? And then they have like the timeline, and it ends up being like 21.5 years is the exact time to joke about something horrible. And I can't help but think about that when 2001 was 22 years ago. And so as a result, the Zoomers they don't know the horror that my generation went through. And then enough like apathetic and anti-American people are like, well, it's been 20 years, so screw it. I'll just say the most gross things I can possibly imagine. Whereas I still have flashbacks of people like watching people. I'm trying to be polite, but pass, like die on live television. That's my memory.
Yeah, or people like I was watching live and that guy leaped off the tower to try to save his life because he was burning to death. Right. And look. I made a decision before we started the show. I was going to be real on it. I'm not going to give you politician Brianna talk, which I'm sure will bite me in the ass at some point. But look, I'm going to tell you the truth, which is I occasionally laugh at some of the 9/11 content online. My good friend Keffels has a meme that's out there of her firing a gun and someone has merged it with the Twin Towers being hit. And look, it's horrific, but it's funny, and I laugh at that every single time. I'm not sitting here like serious State Department person and telling you like none of this irreverence is ever funny, okay? But this is not a joke. This is not a like trying to be provocative. This person is tying into another story we're going to talk about, which is a whole bunch of people on TikTok looking at bin Laden's letter to the United States and saying, hey, I agree with that. And this person is like going the most anti-establishment, America sucks take I can possibly give you is that bin Laden I agreed with here, right? So this is just her going to the most extreme take. And I'm going to say it, man. This is privilege. This person is a writer. They don't serve in the military. They are not a police officer. They're not going to have to clean up any of the problems of the violence they are inciting. And it's just, it is the ultimate thing that someone in the nice comfort of Massachusetts, living in Worcester, with their lovely, lovely, like high taxes and good social safety net here, this is the kind of thing you can only tweet when you don't live in a war zone, right? So just absolute privilege, man.
Yeah. And so so for me, I think reading her next tweet, which we'll do in a second, which was like her apology or whatever, I think the analysis that it's privilege is dead on. But I also think that what's kind of going on here is that these people have not touched the muddy and bloody world ever. And so
Yes.
as a result, they can watch a few clips from 9/11 where you see the jumper, which is a man who's leaping to his death in order to avoid fire. You can see the plane smack into the buildings 10,000 times until you're desensitized. You can watch the, you know, the fireballs. You could watch the firemen and the cops running towards the buildings in order to get people out, and realize that most of those people basically didn't make it out. You can look at all that kind of stuff, and you can kind of like you can push it away emotionally because you haven't encountered that kind of thing in your life. But I think that a lot of people who are first responders or doctors or nurses or anything like that, when they experience that kind of trauma where they watch somebody severely injured or pass on, they take that and they extrapolate it to the horror of real world events. And so as a result, you're basically like, some of this stuff can be funny, but when you're being cruel just to be cruel, and we're also talking about in the wake of 10/7, you're basically taking an emotional knife and jamming it into people's hearts and then laughing as you twist it. And that's the kind of cruelty that we've seen for, I don't know, at least the past month.
So I've always wanted to ask you this, like something you told me in private, and I hope I can say it on the air,
Of
is like
course.
one of the reasons you left being a cop is it wasn't enough money to wrestle crackheads to the ground every single night. Like you've been out there as just a normal person, like just trying to keep your community safe and orderly and like deal with stuff like this. Like, what is the human cost of like dealing with violence day in and day out? Because this person we know is not going to have to deal with that. Like, what is that like for you? Can you humanize that to people?
Yeah, I think for my experience, it's probably taken until even tonight
Yeah,
to process some of the traumas that I've been through. And the way that I deal with it is I actually a lot of people just cover it up. They just
yeah,
they drink, they do pills, they ignore their own trauma, they work so hard that they don't have to relive some of the worst aspects of their life. You know, I'm Irish, so I love misery, so I just love sifting through all my trauma. And so what it really takes in order to dig through that kind of stuff is a lot of contemplation about mortality and pain and empathy, and then also having unsolvable problems and ghosts. Like, I'm not trying to be like too dramatic here, but there were things like, you know, not to be too graphic, but there was an animal that was shot and was deeply injured, and the family couldn't afford to fix it, and I gave them a few $100s to try to encourage them to take it to the vet. But as far as I know, the injury was probably so grievous that that animal was put down, and that's just like a horror that I have to think about, like, relatively speaking, like just whenever my mind's
yeah,
quiet. You know,
yeah,
animal abuse pops up, child abuse pops up, some murders pop up. And so every now and then, especially very early in my career, I had somebody pass in my arms, and from a homicide, and that just like, I take the pain that I saw his family go through in the wake of that, and I extrapolate that out to everything. So when I see Palestinians mourning because they've lost family members to airstrikes, when I see Israelis mourning because they've had families murdered by terrorists, when I see assholes like this completely ignorant of that kind of trauma, it really it cuts me to my core. And frankly, like, I'm trying to be as tactful as I can right now, but I get really angry about it.
yeah.
Bitter and angry.
I I haven't experienced that firsthand. I'm genuinely sorry you saw that, but you know, I did grow up in a military family, and I certainly grew up around a lot of men that saw that, right? And I feel like if you're taking the people whose job it is to take care of this, to basically deal with the violence as it spills out into society for granted, I think you fundamentally lost part of your humanity. And I think that's why, you know, on the left, I've really gotten a lot more aggressive about calling this stuff out. I think it's a cancer of our movement. I think it undermines all of our moral authority. And yeah, I got into the left. I know you and I have a difference of opinion about the role government should play in our lives, but I got into the left because I think the government has a role to play in healthcare, like infrastructure, hospitals, schools, that kind of stuff, right? I didn't get into it to like advocate for bin Laden, you know, coming and destroying my own country. And I just want to I just want to throw them into the sea. So that's how I am.
No, it's actually kind of funny because the reason why I was laughing, even though we're talking about dour things, is one. Willie Mac Show, so that's one of the things that we'll be talking about tonight. But Willie Mac Show did a video piece. He did two of them. One of them's an hour, one of them's like 30 minutes, and it's basically just a takedown. He's not a geopolitical analysis, but a takedown of Hassan Piker. And one of the clips that he plays in the early-ish stage of his 30-minute video, and also at the end, is Hassan cackling like a hyena when a female cop is shot by one of her partners.
Are you okay?
No, you shot me!
Oh, God! Are you okay? Echo 7, 1081. Go.
Now, the female cop lived, and like, I get it, like you don't view these people as people because they're arms of the institution and all that kind of stuff. But I think about that thought process extrapolated out to tens of thousands of young people where they're like, oh, police can be murdered, and it's funny. Like it's funny when they die. And for me, that's such like a disgusting thing that, like, you're saying that you want to push some of these people into the sea. My vote is that when society collapses, we actually we take all the Cubans who want to come here and we deport all of these people to Cuba. That's my solution. Vosh talks about Coconut Island. I want to make this literal.
I can't disagree with that policy. So before we move on from this,
Sure.
I have, I'm not a fan of J.K. Rowling's politics or her trans positions. I think more importantly, I don't think the Harry Potter books are that good. That's my real beef with her. I think they're really, really oversold, and I think there's a psychological analysis to be done about an entire generation that fell in love with the book, telling them basically they're the most special person ever made in all of history, can stop the evil one-on-one. But all of that is to say, not a fan of J.K. Rowling, but this person that wrote this tweet actually has a past of calling for violence before. She put out a tweet, linked to the post below. We'll put it in our show notes. This is a New York Post article about her tweeting that she wants to, quote, slit J.K. Rowling's throat.
Oh.
So I know that she came forward after this and, said, oh, sorry, I'm just going through a lot. This isn't something I usually do. Well, it kind of seems like it is. So maybe you should... pause and think about the standards that you hold yourself to.
Get the fuck off social media for a bit. That would be my advice.
maybe permanently, and this isn't a sock puppet. This is a well-known author with a substantial following, with her real face out there, with book contracts. So this is not being done performatively. I think this is how this person really feels.
Which, I mean, we're part of the diversity of a free society is our schizophrenics being able to post to social media. But that's obviously one of the challenges as well, is we get to see the schizophrenic posts of our insane people, and then we have to deal with them because the algorithms are engineered in order to make the most outrageous things popular. But I still think that this still undergirds a real like social commentary, which I'm sure we'll move into with the Bin Laden letter. But I want to read her apology real quick, just so we can keep things moving a bit. And so she tweets, "The other day, in a moment of distress, I talked out of my ass to play devil's advocate in a tasteless, needless way. I sincerely regret it, and I apologize to anyone hurt or offended by my thoughtless words." So how do you feel about her apology?
I don't think it's great. It's centered all around her. It doesn't really show any growth. I don't think this is a good apology, personally. There's no feeling in it, and I think the pattern of behavior just overall doesn't speak very well. Maybe you have more grace than I do. Yeah,
what would be the political the political advice to or the market advice in order to get a more sincere apology out there, just in case there's any content creators out there who watch this content and they want to be able to fake a more sincere apology?
Well, I think writing something that felt like giving an anecdote about how you realized that was wrong and hurtful,
Mm.
like going into specifics about how it can hurt people, how you plan to do better. I think it reads like Chat GPT wrote it, to be honest with you. So not great in my view.
All right. Well, my opinion on it is it could be heartfelt, but much like we'll explore later in the show, the apology doesn't matter if the pattern of behavior continues. And so
Yeah.
if your pattern is like you get homicidal on social media, which we've all been there, like I've been homicidal on social media, but then you engage in ways for negative attention, and then you just do it 6 months later, and you say some of the worst, most evil that's ever been uttered on social media ever, to the point that we're talking about it, then yeah, maybe you need to touch some grass, take some pills, relax, like go do something else.
She has
But
another tweet where she's talking about needing to go take a bunch of benzos and lay down for the day. So maybe that's a
good
good
for
idea.
her.
Yeah.
Like, that's not too many benzos, but the right amount of benzos. So that kind of leads us into, I'm sure everybody at homes, they've already seen the TikToks on Twitter, the compilations of a series of I would presume progressives. You can tell me if you don't think they're progressives, but a series of sheltered left-wing sympathetic people who are reading Osama bin Laden's 2002 letter for the very first time, and they appear to be quite sympathetic to the man's motivations. So we were actually, this has been scrubbed from the internet. It's actually relatively difficult to find, but we did find a full text copy. So I am ready. It's only 2 pages. I was ready to read it to see if we too can sympathize with a jihadist mass murderer.
So, just super quickly, I don't like the Guardian taking this down. I don't know how you feel, but I feel like we
Mm.
never had an honest discussion as a country about bin Laden's actual reasons for attacking us. Like Bush kind of just came out and said they hate us for our freedom. Which
Mm.
is, I guess that's fine for children, but I think I don't always agree that the best answer for bad speech is more speech. But I do think we needed an honest conversation. Like, you can't defeat your enemies if you don't understand why they're attacking you, right? So I really wish that the Guardian had left this up, let people read it, so it doesn't seem like it's like hidden knowledge that's being kept from you,
Mhm.
and had done like stories like really examining what the reasons were to kind of educate this generation that seems to not understand it. How do
Well,
you kind of feel about that?
yeah, I kind of wonder if that's the challenge of politics and media in general, because like I do kind of think that there's a power. So for instance, like on a good stream night, I'll break between 80 and 150 people live. We'll get a few thousand viewers in the after show. Of course, like we have to dedicate our energy to being consistent. That's one of the most important things with creating content. But it seems like some of the wildest, most popular creators, I'll name drop, but Hassan Piker, Ludwig, Pokimane, all those mainstream Twitch and YouTube creators, they are kind of built for not the least common denominator, but the average common denominator. And so as a result, I'm not surprised that politicians talk to us like we're middle schoolers, because they probably presume that the average intelligence and reading comprehension of the average American is that of a middle schooler. That being said, I do think that people die based off of these lies of omission and commission. And
Yeah.
as a result, we owe it to ourselves as a moral society to have earnest conversations about this kind of stuff. And so just as an example, when I went to war, I knew that like they hated us for our freedom because I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years as well. But when I went to war, I was like, well, what am I really fighting for? Like, what am I fighting for, America? And I was like, I'm fighting for
Right.
the ability to drink liquor and go see strippers. That's what I'm fighting for. Because in the Middle East and North Africa, you can't drink alcohol and you can't see boobs. And that is that is one of God's many greatest gifts to humanity. And as a result, if these people want to come over here with Kalashnikovs and force us all into niqabs and hijabs, and they want to chop the hands off of thieves and all that kind of stuff, then they're an evil opponent worthy of destruction, as evidenced in the jihadist attacks of 9/11. I felt like that was a pretty childish understanding of geopolitics and our enemy and all that kind of stuff. But it was enough. But I think a lot of people go to war with the GI Joe good guy bad guy analysis.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I mean, it seems like one of the things I was really struck with the first time we met and had pizza together is you kind of like really talking about geopolitics and your kind of cynical view of, I'm not saying it's inaccurate, I'm saying it's cynical, right? Kind of a dark view about, the United States military kind of being a tool to secure resources around the world. And it wasn't that I don't disagree with a lot of that, but do you think a lot of people, like with your experience, come to that conclusion, and the fact that it is kind of black and white when you get in and then you get out and it's more gray? Does that kind of change a lot of people? Was the experience unique to you?
No, 100%. And
Yeah.
and the reason why, obviously different people have different levels of consideration, and not every 100 IQ normie grunt is going to have, like, just because they go to Okinawa or go to Iraq doesn't mean that they're like a student of geopolitical history, right? But what happens is they kind of see the, I don't want to say corruption, because corruption is like too intentional. They see like the incompetence of the American war machine, and they see like the broad supply chains, and they see like Burger Kings in Kuwait and Iraq, and they see like officers like sneaking liquor in with the contractors while the enlisted people have to like live out of tents and all that kind of stuff. And so they kind of see like the human frailties of the ideals that they go to war for. And then if you see some of your friends die, or if you end up killing people, then that's like a lot of emotional trauma. And so you have to ask yourself, like, is killing other human beings worth whatever we're allegedly fighting for? And is the American project worth dying for? And so a lot of people, their answer, when they actually see blood and guts and mud up close, their answer is no, because that thing is so horrible that they couldn't imagine something that would be worth doing that to another human being, or having it done to them. They can't imagine something worth fighting for that's deep. But there's also, I would say, a warrior class that I think is present in every society, and they're just men who are built for conflict. So if you give them an ideology, if you give them physical fitness training, if you give them weapons and all that kind of stuff, they will happily fight those wars. And in that class of people, I kind of found like a binary split. I found people who, because they had killed and died for America, or their friends had died for America, they were still bought into the narrative. America is the best country in the world. We fight for the right reasons. World War II, we saved the Jews. Not really. But, we did all the right things as best we could, and all of our enemies suck. And then I saw another cast, which I was infinitely more fascinated with. I'll try to wrap this up. But one of the casts that I saw in at least two of my really good friends when they came home is they realized that you have people like that fucking Twitter person. And they're like, and they're citizens with that person. And they see Miley Cyrus on stage with a fucking dildo, like, doing like weird debaucherous sex shit. And it's like promoted on MTV. And they're like, holy shit, why am I fighting for like a debaucherous, alcoholic, like Funko Pop consuming, soulless sex cult, when the people that I'm killing are principled warriors who have the balls to fight for something and try to kill me and die? And so these people, who I'm utterly fascinated with them, they end up, through like bitterness with the American Republic as it currently exists, they end up liking and respecting the people they used to kill. It's absolutely psychotic. But it's beautiful.
Crazy. I want to do a longer show on this sometime. Oh my gosh. Can I give you just super briefly, because I want to get to the letter. But I feel like I had kind of an opposite trajectory than you, because I came from, when I was in my 20s, I was a Noam Chomsky reading radical, like the same way a lot of these people were. Though I never praised bin Laden, my God, because I never suffered a head injury like that. But one of the things that really kind of, white-pilled me on the United States, and kind of seeing this as a country of values worth fighting for, is just getting further and further in my career and getting to know more and more people that like work in government and work in institutions. And I mean, I'm obviously talking like the cops in your town, you know, often they're really good people. They're just trying to serve your community the best way they can. But I'm even talking at the State Department. Like, you know, once I started making friends at the State Department, like professionals that go get a master's degree and they're genuinely like looking at humanitarian crises, trying to secure funding for it and like get resources out to help crises around the world, or seeing like getting to know just people working in the mid-level of government and agencies that are completely taken for granted, like not having the resources to do their job and not particularly being paid well enough for it, but like understanding that the country doesn't function if people can't get their social security check. So I think one of the things that's really changed my view on this is like the older you get, the more you understand about how the country actually works. And like our court system, there's a lot there we're fighting for with a lot of our policy around the world and our ideals. I think there are things we're fighting for. So I think whereas you've gotten maybe a little bit more jaded as you've gotten older, I've gone the other way. And maybe it's just because of the battlefields I fight in. I don't know.
Yeah, it's wild that you say that because I was actually heartened by the testimony of the attorney generals against Trump, and I was heartened by the IRS whistleblowers, and I was heartened by I'm trying to think of the other guy's name who ran it. But basically, it's like these people, at least my perception, is like they're passionate, they have a servant mindset. They care about principles. They fail in those principles, but they still strive towards those ideals. And I was thinking to myself, it's like, I'm such a jaded asshole. And like these people somehow, because they're believers, they were able to keep their like sense of like principle and integrity together for 20 whole years of a career, which is impressive, by the way. And somehow they didn't allow that to embitter them. So I was like, man, maybe I'm mentally weak. But the one of the things that I think this happens with grunts a lot of people who are on the front end of the delivery of humanitarian relief and aid and security services and all that kind of stuff. When you're high up, when you're in the I would say in the military, in the officer sphere, when you're in the State Department, which I think is entirely like that would be the officer sphere, there's a lot of like technocratic calculations about how resources get distributed and how people are going to execute jobs. Some of those are good ideas, and some of them are completely disconnected from the reality on the ground. And then also, even I'm sure there's like the State Department equivalent of grunts. I'm sure that they get frustrated when their decision about where medical services go, or where water projects go, or where food projects or dental relief or medical relief go is literally determining whether or not people live or die. And if if they're field people, then they might have shaken the hands of like the village leaders and tried to say like, hey, I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best to get you some relief for XYZ problem. And then they have to know that through a technocratic calculus that might not even be up to them, they are dooming other people to misery and death. And I think that can really embitter people when they see those technocratic choices made, and especially if they think the technocratic choices are not made because of some higher idealism, but just because of a calculation about material well-being and
or political expediency that sabotages stuff at State Department all the time.
That is, and I could not imagine the heartbreak of basically like, you know, reaching out into communities, building for a half decade to a decade, and then realizing by ending your relationship with those people, you're effectively dooming them to death and misery and slaughter. That seems like something like, I'm sure there's passionate people at the State Department who watched the Afghan pullout, and some of them probably resigned and were absolutely heartbroken about it.
I have no doubt. I think there's a difference in stakes too. Like if you've seen actual war, you know, I've seen elections, right? Like it's easier to go canvas than it is to, you know, go patrol Fallujah and worry about, an IED. So,
but how power is wielded is wildly important, and we can get into the letter because I'm sure we could wax philosophical about the State Department and military churning and burning people.
We'll do it. Sorry to get us off course on the first episode.
We already knew this was going to happen before we started.
We did.
So what we're going to do instead is we're going to read the manifesto of a jihadist terrorist. So,
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, you know, he starts strong. Let me just make sure my Discord is lined up. So he starts strong. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, permission to fight against disbelievers is given to those parentheses, believers, who are fought against because they have been wronged, and surely Allah is able to give the believers victory. Quran 22:39. So my interpretation, and just so we can move quickly, you know, we don't have to stop every sentence, but my interpretation is that he's saying that his attacks are defensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're I can do what I want. That's basically how I read that.
Yeah. So this is self-defense, therefore it's justified. Those who believe fight in the cause of Allah, and those who disbelieve fight in the cause of Tagut, which is anything worshipped other than Allah, or Satan, which serves Satan. So fight you against the friends of Satan, ever feeble is indeed the plot of Satan. So because my interpretation again, because Islam views atheism and secularism as one of the root evils of the world, where you're effectively straying souls away from God in heaven, that serves Satan. So that's my other interpretation. So global secular capital would be Satan.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Some American writers have published articles under the title on What Basis Are We Fighting? These articles have generated a number of responses, some of which adhere to the truth and were based on Islamic law, and others which have not. Here, we wanted to outline the truth as an explanation and warning, hoping for Allah's reward, seeking success and support for him. While seeking Allah's help, we form our reply based on two questions. Why are we fighting and opposing you? And question two, what are we calling you to, and what do we want you to, or what do we want from you? As from the first question, why are we fighting and opposing you? The answer is very simple. Because you attacked us and continue to attack us. Anything to add?
Let's get going.
Okay. A, you attacked us in Palestine. Palestine, which has sunk under military occupation for more than 80 years, the British handed over Palestine with your help and your support to the Jews, who have occupied it for more than 50 years, overflowing with oppression, tyranny, crimes, killing, expulsion, destruction, and devastation. The creation and continuation of Israel is one of the greatest crimes, and you are the leaders of its criminals. And of course, there is no need to explain and prove the degree of American support for Israel. The creation of Israel is a crime which must be erased. Each and every person whose hands have become polluted in the contribution towards this crime must pay its price, and pay for it heavily. Anything?
Kind of Holocausty, a little bit Holocausty there.
Little Holocaust. Well, okay, but here's the thing, though. What we could do, because this is what I saw leftists on Twitter suggest, is Israel could just disband its military. They could give up their arms. They could erase their borders. They could let all the Palestinians have a right to return. And then what's going to happen, it's not going to be a mass slaughter or rape or murder or suicide bombs or pogroms or anything like that. What's going to happen instead is Arab Muslims of the Palestinian people will be so convinced by left-wing progressive ideals that they will institute a secular society that treats everyone fairly, regardless of ethnic background or religion. So how does that solution strike you?
I don't think it's realistic. I mean, I obviously want to be careful to point out that Bin Laden's point of view is not necessarily the Palestinian point of view. I do think that what you're reading here is people that want a state based on Islam, and kind of the mindset of that. What's really of note here is it's right here, like the creation and continuation of Israel is one of the greatest crimes. Really, the greatest crimes. That's like it doesn't feel like this. When I read this, it makes it really apparent to me why people in Israel might feel like they need a really, really strong border and a really strong national security policy to address people with this mindset.
Which I could go on 3 tangents from that, but I'm going to resist the urge just because we're going to have
bottom line. Give me the bottom line.
Well, the bottom line is I think a lot of people, including Elon Musk and Candace Owens, have been effectively asking the Jewish question in public. And they've just been like,
I agree.
Why are Jews disproportionately represented in sectors of wealth and power? Why are they contributing to these progressive worldviews? Why are they contributing to these progressive colleges? And of course, these are generalizations, but then I sympathize. I've read a few historical books of Jewish folk who basically said, like, you wonder why we seek power and influence. You wonder why we try to, basically make ourselves integral to society. It's because every 30 or 40 years, everybody tries to kill us. So wouldn't you try to make yourself integrated and valuable to society if every 40 years somebody tries to wipe you off the planet? So I find that reasoning compelling. And also,
I agree.
yeah, sorry, one more half tangent. I promise I'll reel it back in. The Jewish control of media should, if it was actually real, should have done an infinitely better job of like stopping the criticism of Israel and Jews. And I am not seeing any of that. Like 1500% or 1000% or 500% overrepresentation of Jews in media has done nothing to stop the wave of like criticism of Israel and just general, frankly, anti-Semitism that I've seen.
I've always interpreted this, and oh God, this is probably going to get clipped and shipped and used against me. But, when I am married to Frank, like growing up in Mississippi, I got to know Frank's family, and through that, a lot of Chinese people, right? And I got to tell you, Frank and all the Chinese people I've met that immigrated to the United States do not take things for granted the way, frankly, a lot of white people do, right? Like Frank was just raised to think he's got to work harder, he's got to go to school harder, he's got to know more, he's got to excel. Is just drilled into him, right? And I think that mindset, in my experience, has been true for a lot of people that are outsiders in many capacities, right? I think the women in the game industry can push past the bullshit, and last tend to be better game developers. And I have no doubt that's true for Jewish people too. So there's some like overrepresentation at the top. I think it's probably because they've, certain cultures are attracted to certain industries, right? Like there are a lot of Chinese people in biotech, for instance. It just seems like a normal part of like where you're kind of the outsider and you've got to work harder, or you have that belief you do. So I don't think there's anything like crazy about that.
Well, and I want to point out something that's funny or ironic or dark or whatever that people can interpret however they want to. And lucky for me, I'm more centrist or right wing. So when I talk about Jewish people descriptively, people are like, yes, based, they're like, yes, tell us more. So one of the things that Eric or Brett Weinstein, I forget which one, I think it was Eric. I think he's the more based one, so I think he said this. He pointed out that during Passover, one of the things that they do is they eat unleavened bread, and the memory of that, or excuse me, is Passover the celebration of the Exodus? I thought it was.
Yes.
But there's
when
there's multiple holidays.
Yeah, they put blood on the door, and then it's because the force that was going to kill all the people passed over.
Right.
And right, that's why they had the leavened bread.
But the unleavened bread was the bread that didn't rise, so it was still edible, but it wasn't baked the way that it's supposed to be. And so the tradition or the lesson that you're supposed to take from that concept is that the people who waited for the bread to rise, they didn't make it. They were still slaves or butchered in the land of Egypt. And so as a result, if you look at, I'm pretty sure Hanukkah is about like the candles that like lasted for more days than they were supposed to during a siege. I'm pretty sure, Passover with the, the unleavened bread is about, remembering that like you need to be quick, you need to be agile, and some people are coming for you. So if you're raised with that as a mentality from, birth, one of the things that he said jokingly, but I think is really funny, is like the dumb Jews didn't make it, right? Like so like the 80 IQ guys who were like, yeah, bro, like it's cool, like the Egyptians are cool, they said we could leave, and like, I want to wait for the bread to rise because it's actually really nasty when it's like unleavened. Those dudes ended up being slaves in Egypt, and now they're fucking stuck. So when you look at the defensiveness of Jewish people, I think that all you really have to do is point out at the past month and ask whether or not that defensiveness is justified. And
real talk, I have been on teams before, and sometimes people make comments, and I've respected it, but I've thought in the back of my mind, like, is that really real? is that really something you have to worry about? And it's like after the last couple of weeks, it's like, yeah, it's real, and
I
I was
get it.
completely wrong there.
I get it. You know, you live in Canada. People are shooting into unoccupied Jewish schools in the middle of the night. People are spray painting Stars of David on the sides of your business and, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And there's all sorts of different kinds of Jews, and they're not all Zionists. So what the fuck?
How about the way the entire progressive movement has just turned on Jewish people? There was a piece in the Times. I have a really good friend of mine, Ariella, who I reached out to see how she was doing with all this horror. And she sent me this article back saying, you know, thanks for checking up on me. It's been really hard. And it's this piece talking about, you know, like progressive Jews. And they're like, look, from our point of view, we've stood with trans people and fat people and black people and, you know, all these causes. And, you know, now it's like, we're the enemy. We're like, no one's standing with us. They feel really betrayed, you know?
I have a tangent there, but I'm going to put a pin in that for the
we gotta
Elon
get through
Musk
the letter.
tweet, because I think that's going to bring all of that home. Let's continue.
Get back to the letter. Yes.
Of course. It brings us both laughter and tears to see that you have not yet tired of repeating your fabricated lies that the Jews have a historical right to Palestine as it was promised to them in the Torah. Anyone who disputes with them on this alleged fact is accused of anti-Semitism. This is one of the most fallacious, widely circulated fabrications in history. The people of Palestine are pure Arabs and original Semites. It is the Muslims who are the inheritors of Moses, peace be upon him, and the inheritors of the real Torah that has not been changed. Muslims believe in all of the prophets, including Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, or Allah be upon them all. If the followers of Moses have been promised a right to Palestine in the Torah, then the Muslims are the most worthy nation of this. I have notes, but I'll read the next paragraph. When the Muslims conquered Palestine and drove out the Romans, Palestine and Jerusalem returned to Islam, the religion of all the prophets, peace be upon them. Therefore, the call to a historical right to Palestine cannot be raised against the Islamic Ummah that believes in all the prophets of Allah, peace be upon them, and blessings be upon them, and we make no distinctions between them. I've studied this, so I have a little bit of a rant. Do you want to go first?
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. So my understanding, happy to be corrected by any Muslim at any point, is that Islam views monotheism as like the default perspective of humanity. And therefore, monotheists who pre-existed Christ, who pre-existed Abraham, who pre-existed all that kind of stuff, they were actually Muslims. It's actually like the state of nature of human beings. And so Judaism, as far as I understand it, is an insular religion. It believes that only the Jews are God's chosen people, and as a result, they have this history, etc. Plenty of Jews are not literalists, but they still identify with the religious and ethnic history that they've inherited, because let's face it, if you looked at their history and their biblical scripts, you can understand why they have main character syndrome. I get it.
Right.
So, so Jews have main character syndrome. But what happens with, I'll try to keep this brief, but Christians are heretics to both Jews and Muslims because they believe in the Trinity. They don't just believe that Jesus was a prophet. They believe that he was a divine incarnation, which Muslims and Jews do not believe. So Christians are effectively heretics for both of those faiths. And then when it comes to Muslims, Jews are a closed monotheistic faith, whereas Islam is an open monotheistic faith. And as far as I can tell, they believe that the world will not know peace until everybody believes in the one true God. And they have a universalist religion, which is part of the reason why they exist from Morocco to Malaysia. And they have no problems with converts. They love converts. It's fantastic. And basically in the ordained, correct world, Muslims would run everything. Pagans would not exist. Atheists would not exist. Polytheists, just extensions of pagans, would not exist. And then Jews and Christians would be like brothers of the book. I forget the exact term, but it's basically like they believe some weird shit, but they still come from Abraham, and therefore they're in a protected status. And that's why Israel, from bin Laden's perspective, it can't stand, because it does not defer itself to the spiritual authority of Islam.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's a hard thing. This is where just my own limitations, I'm so pragmatically minded that, I can't prove a religious belief either true or false, right? Like I can only evaluate this stuff through where the public policy implications. So it's hard to know where to go with this. Like I appreciate him explaining his thoughts. It's that doesn't mean you get like whatever public policy you want based on your religion. So there it is.
Well, then this is kind of the dualism of Islam. I know we have more content to get through, so we'll keep it moving. But the dualism of Islam is that, especially early in the Quran, Muhammad says that like only God knows the fate of souls. And if a person is worshiping a religion, then you let them do their thing, because basically it's already been ordained by God who's going to heaven and who's going to hell. Therefore, if somebody believes something different, leave them alone, basically. But in the second half of the Quran, he's at war. And so the verses get a little bit more spicy. They get a little bit less tolerant. And so as a result, you know, the Quran can be interpreted either way, like giga tolerant or giga, I'll just say spicy to keep it nice.
I guess, you know what this reminds me of is Warhammer. Like,
yeah. Maybe
it does a little bit. So
maybe the God Emperor Mankind is correct. Maybe I was thinking this the other day. It's like I believe in like a deist version of God. But maybe the God Emperor is correct. Maybe humanity is too primitive to have like dogma.
Yeah.
But
all right, part 3. Here's where we get to the public policy of what Bin Laden actually wants. So I can bite into this one.
All right. The blood pouring out of Palestine must be equally revenged. You must know that the Palestinians do not cry alone. Their women are not widowed alone. Their sons are not orphaned alone. Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going.
You attacked us in Somalia. You supported the Russian atrocities against us in Chechnya, the Indian oppression against us in Kashmir, and the Jewish aggression against us in Lebanon. C. Under your supervision, consent, and orders, the governments of our countries, which act as your agents, attack us on a daily basis. I don't know why it goes to I. Oh, this is a subsect. These governments prevent our people from establishing the Islamic Sharia using violence and lies to do so. Subsection 2, these governments give us a taste of humiliation and place us in a large prison of fear and subdual. Subsection 3, these governments steal our Ummah's wealth and sell them to you at a paltry price. Subsection 4, these governments have surrendered to the Jews and handed them most of Palestine, acknowledging the existence of their state over the dismembered limbs of their own people. Subsection 5, the removal of these governments is an obligation upon us and a necessary step to free the Ummah and to make the Sharia the supreme law and to regain Palestine, and our fight against these governments is not separate from our fight against you.
A lot to bite into here. I mean,
yeah, I'm going to pause there.
Yeah, so, okay, so you have some, I'm not going to say legitimate from everyone's point of view, but at least I can understand where if he's talking about like our policy, you know, some of our engagement in what are the places he mentions here: Somalia, Chechnya, Kashmir, Lebanon. I can understand how the populations in those places did not particularly enjoy the United States involvement there. And I think, Connor, both you and I would agree that there is a long list of poor foreign policy decisions that the United States government has embarked in under my lifetime. And there is some truth here to the colonialism aspect of this and securing resources in other countries and plundering them. There's some truth there. I'm not going to deny that. I think where it's really hard and where any progressive agreeing with this should really have their head examined, look at the policy proposal he's giving to you. The removal of these governments is an obligation among us. It's a necessary step to basically create the world that they want. So they want to topple every single one of these governments and allies himself with the United States. And this is something I really think is under discussed with this whole thing. Even with the Ukraine war, this is super under discussed. People don't appreciate just how much the United States is used as a scapegoat by corrupt governments all around the world as an excuse for their own failures. This is Putin's #1 go-to move that he has done for the longest time. If his economy sucks, it's America's fault, right? If their military sucks, it's America's fault. So it's one of these things where two things are true at once. Like our foreign policy has often not been to the benefit of the people on the other end of that foreign policy. At the same point, like we've been scapegoated in a way that is sometimes out of proportion to the issues at hand, and the policy proposal he's proposing here is just completely untenable.
Yeah, and I think I have a couple of memes popping in my head. One of them is I tweeted this a few times. Unfortunately, it didn't go viral. All those TikToks were coming out saying that, like, oh, I understand Bin Laden now, so I get it. And there's Jake Peralta from the cop series Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he's like, cool motive, still murder. And that's how that's how I feel about
exactly.
it. It's like,
that's it.
You have like a huge geopolitical reasoning for why you're pissed off, and that's understandable, but then your solution is to kill a few thousand people, cause billions of dollars of damage, and cause an international holy war that doesn't cost, by the way, I think the global war on terror cost the United States like 20,000 American lives between the two theaters. It cost us like another 10,000 to 30,000 like civilian contractors of various nations. It cost us like $2 or $3 trillion. But the actual human cost was in the Ummah. It was in the Muslim population. Between
exactly right.
500,000 and 1.5 million people. And what's interesting is he highlights the worldview of ISIS. This is, 10 years before ISIS, but he highlights the worldview where the Muslim rulers of Muslim countries are puppets of Israel and puppets of the United States. And so the war is not just with the United States, it's also with Saudi Arabia. It's also with, Lebanon. It's also with anybody who doesn't support a jihadist, you are also the enemy. And so that's the rub kind of, is people ask like, well, all the hijackers were Saudi, so why didn't we invade Saudi Arabia? And it's because we are, relatively speaking, boys with the Saudi government, and this was a rebel from Saudi Arabia who wants to kill the Saudi government as much as he wants to kill the United States.
That's exactly right. No, that's dead on.
Yeah, and that's where I really hate like baby's first hot take, like the libertarians who are like in Massachusetts or whatever, and they're like, did you know that 17 of the 21 hijackers weren't even Afghan, or they weren't even Afghan or Iraq. They were Saudi Arabia. Why didn't we invade Saudi Arabia? Oil, bro. And it's like, yeah, like oil, but also like they were rebels in their own country, so destroying an ally would have no positive effect, you fucking dunce. Excuse my French.
Exactly. All right, let's get through this letter. We got other topics to get through.
Of course. So
I think we're at D.
Yeah. You steal our wealth.
Yeah,
you steal our wealth and oil at paltry prices because of your international influences and military threats. The theft is indeed the biggest theft ever witnessed by mankind in the history of the world. I think that's bullshit.
I do too.
They're giga wealthy. And also, real quick aside.
Yeah, they're selling it. This is why they're so wealthy. Their governments have done very well, actually. So.
Well, and not just that, but if you look at the household poverty rate and unmarried rate of Saudi Arabia in like 1992, it was horrible. I think like the male unemployment rate was like 40%. And immediately after the 9/11 tax, 9/11 tax, 2 or 3 years, the Saudi government was like, oh, we have 40% male unemployment and we're radicalizing jihadists. If we're not going to have international jihadists take over the entire world, then we need to fix that. And so as a result, I think they got male unemployment under 10%, which I get is like still not great, but that's a lot better than 40. Let's be real. So that's something I Googled like 10 years ago. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But moving on. E, your forces occupy our countries and you spread your military bases throughout them. You corrupt our lands and you besiege our sanctities to protect the security of the Jews and to ensure the continuity of the pillage of our treasures. You have starved the Muslims of Iraq, where children die every day. It is a wonder that more than 1.5 million Iraqi children have died as a result of your sanctions, and you did not show concern. Yet when 3,000 of your people died, the entire world rises and has not yet sat down. Saddam's an asshole.
This is before Iraq War II, which was an atrocity. Those sanctions were there to try to control Saddam Hussein, who had invaded Kuwait for oil. So, I don't disagree with you that like the sanctions were mostly targeted at, it did hurt the civilian population, but like there's a throughput here of the government's like they're failing their people and the United States being blamed for it, right? Like
Well,
the United States is not having those sanctions against Iraq before the first Iraq War because we want to starve those children. It's because Saddam Hussein was a threat to, geostability. So, right, I hear what he's saying, but it just you're leaving out some very important context in my view.
well, and we also have like moral and philosophical and technical and tactical evolution over time. So I think part of the reason why targeted sanctions in the tens, particularly when it came to targeting Russian oligarchs, the reason why that exists is probably because of the international backlash against the sanctions in Iraq, where they were like, why are you punishing civilians? They have the least power possible. So why don't you target the rich oligarchical assholes who are ransacking the wealth of their countries? And then you'll have more international support and more public support from the people within those countries. Of course, we can't tell, what's more effective, but it's probably less dead kids. So, that's good, I guess. Moving on, you have supported the Jews in their idea that Jerusalem is their eternal capital and agreed to move your embassy there. With your help and under your protection, the Israelis are planning to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Under the protection of your weapons, Sharon entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque to pollute it as a preparation to capture and destroy it. I'm going to keep going from there because that's just still Israel bad. 2, these tragedies and calamities are only a few examples of your oppression and aggression against us. It is commanded by our religion and intellect that the oppressed have a right to return that aggression. So do not await anything from us but jihad or holy struggle, resistance and revenge. Is it in any way rational to expect that after America has attacked us for more than half a century, that we will then leave her to live in security and peace? Exclamation point, question mark. 3, you may then dispute that all the above does not justify aggression against civilians for crimes they did not commit and offenses which they did not participate. Interesting. He's anticipating the argument. A, the argument contradicts your continuous repetition that America is the land of freedom and its leaders in this world. Therefore, the American people are the ones who choose the government by the way of their own free will, a choice which stems from their agreement to its policies. Thus, the American people have chosen, consented to, and affirmed their support for the Israeli oppression of the Palestinians, the occupation and usurpation of their land, and its continuous killing, torture, punishment, and expulsion of the Palestinians. The American people have the ability and choice to refuse the policies of their government and even to change it if they want. B, I'm just going to get through this part. B, the American people are the ones who pay the taxes which fund the planes that bomb us in Afghanistan, the tanks that strike and destroy our homes in Palestine, the armies which occupy our lands in the Arabian Gulf, and the fleets which ensure the blockade of Iraq. These tax dollars are given to Israel for it to continue to attack us and penetrate our land. So the American people are the ones who fund the attacks against us, and they are the ones who oversee the expenditure of these monies in the way that they wish through their elected candidates. C, also the American army is part of the American people. It is this very same people who are shamelessly helping the Jews fight against us. D, the American people are the ones who empty both their men and their women in the American armed forces which attack us. E, this is why the American people cannot be innocent of all the crimes committed by the Americans and Jews against us. I'll stop there. That seems like a reasonable place.
Well, okay. So overall, endorsing, collective punishment, which I thought was a lot of the complaint that's currently going on with Palestine. But I think this is where I want to really be honest and say my knowledge of Israeli Palestine foreign policy really picks up when Netanyahu got in charge. What was it, 16 years ago? Because that has been in the news. His far right policies, the escalation of violence and the abuse of the Palestinians. Which is why I'm really opposed to it. I think I would probably need to read up more about what the history is like with Israel and Palestine in this era to have a really, really good understanding of this. But I just obviously don't agree that you can come strike American cities because you feel entitled to a land that you consider holy and you want to wipe Israel off the map.
Yeah, and that's one of the things where somebody was pointing out the irony of being like, oh, the jihadists think attacking civilians is based, so what's your objection to Israel doing what it's doing? And so that's it's like, oh, okay, so you indiscriminately slaughter people, so what's the beef?
That's again, want to be very careful.
Tit for tat, eye for an eye, right?
Palestinian people are not bin Laden, and we should not conflate that. But this same mindset kind of justifies what Israel is doing right now, which I don't support, to be clear. But if that's the rules you want to agree to, there it is.
We should find somebody that there's gonna be somebody who kind of bites down on this, but they can't bite down on it fully because it's not popular in the liberal Western world. But I think I tweeted, consequentialism and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. And what I mean by that is Vaush, love him dearly, but Vaush has talked about how the impacts like the results are the same, therefore things can be morally equivalent. And this logic has been extended by leftoids, by progressives, to terrorism. And so when they say, like, oh, well, if you get somebody and you strap a bomb to them and they walk into a public area and they suicide bomb and they kill like 30 civilians, or if you're a drone and then you fire a Hellfire missile at a terrorist target and then it kills 30 civilians, that's the same thing. And for me, one of the important moral distinctions is that, like, I could get into this into more detail, but the intent of a suicide bombing is to inflict terror on the civilian population, to get everybody to bow down, to get them to be so scared of the terrorists that they basically concede military and political control to the terrorists. Whereas the intent of a Hellfire missile killing a terrorist is in order to prevent a massacre of civilians. So yes, there's collateral damage, but basically, like, what do you just want to let the terrorist operate unhindered because he hides amongst civilians? And then that gets into arguments about, like, well, why don't we send in special forces in order to reduce casualties? And then it's like, okay, well, now we're invading the holy Muslim lands with boots on the ground, and that carries its own host of risks and costs. So don't kill civilians. Killing civilians is bad. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Wow. Brave. Stunning and brave. So let's continue.
Let's finish.
Yeah. So if you want to finish, we can finish, because I think we're about halfway, I guess. But
we got 30 minutes. Yeah. Why don't we call it there? Unless you think it'd be a good segment to, like, clip all of this out, like we go through the entire ladder. I think that would be a pretty good thing to drop on YouTube.
I think so. And also the other ones, I still think this is going to be hot in a week. Maybe not like the Willie Mack debate and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think the anti-Semitism that we've seen over the past 3 weeks is going anywhere. So if there's a hotter topic next week, we can do the hotter topic, but right wing. Maybe
we'll find some more time this week and jump on and finish the rest of our topics for this week, because I don't think 2 hours is going to be enough for our show.
Well, yeah, let's dial it in. That's, of course, the whole point of the inaugural episode. Cannot be innocent. Okay, so here we go. So F, and this is wrapping up question 1. Allah the Almighty legislated the permission and the option to take revenge. Thus, if we are attacked, then we have the right to attack back. Whoever has destroyed our villages and towns, then we have the right to destroy their villages and towns. Whoever has stolen our wealth, then we have the right to destroy their economy. And whoever has killed our civilians, then we have the right to kill theirs. The American government and press still refuses to answer this question. Why did they attack us in New York and Washington? If Sharon is a man of peace in the eyes of Bush, then we are also men of peace. America does not understand the language of manners and principles, so we are addressing it using the language it understands.
Wait, you gotta read that again. That does not move. Yeah. I'm trying to parse this. This is poorly written.
Oh, I think, well, he is speaking a different language. So the American government and press still refuses to answer the question, why did the terrorists attack us in New York and Washington?
Which I agree with.
If Sharon is a man of peace in the eyes of Bush, then we are also men of peace. America does not understand the language. Because it would go back to Israel is a crime, its establishment is a crime, its expansion is a crime, and therefore the slow rolling expansion of Israel is just as violent as jihadist terrorism. It's just more civilized. Therefore, Westerners don't care about it.
They've done bad things. That makes whatever we do good. That's the way I read this.
Well, and that's literally what he's arguing for. He's literally arguing for eye for an eye, and he says that in the Quran, eye for an eye is ordained by God.
America does not understand the language of manners and principles, so we are addressing it the language it understands. So basically, we are subhuman, and violence against us is justified.
Well, what I would say, if I was to steelman a jihadist
Please.
terrorist, I would say that he's saying that diplomacy and language and appeals to humanity are not working. Therefore, he's speaking in a language we understand, which is reciprocal violence.
Do you
So,
think so?
yeah, that's my interpretation. If
Yeah,
Sharon, so this
yeah.
sentence, America does not understand the language of manners and principles, so we are addressing it using the language it understands. So for me, he's saying that the United States of America does not understand manners and principles. So he's saying that we're unprincipled a-holes. And so since we don't understand diplomacy, manners, and principles, then they're going to speak to us in the language of violence, since that's a language we understand.
I've often, sometimes as I've gotten to know people like all around the world, sometimes when I am talking to, people that are devout Muslims and they're not American, for me, as like, an American feminist, generally I'm going into a situation like talking to a dude, like with respect, obviously, but I don't necessarily assume like he's above me, right? Like I talk to you like you're my friend, you're my equal, like with respect, right? And I sometimes get the sense that there is a like literally a patriarchal kind of assumption that's baked into that, that is kind of, it's interesting to try and navigate sometimes. So when I read this, I'm wondering if that's what he means by we don't understand manners. Like there's a kind of social hierarchy that's based into there that maybe we just don't have the language to figure out how to navigate.
Potentially, I like my interpretation. If Usama was still alive, we would ask him. But unfortunately, the Navy SEALs took care of that. So
Fair,
the,
fair.
but I easily could see both interpretations. So I could see that we are ignorant of the way that they communicate, and as a result, they have to communicate with us, in that patriarchal style where we don't understand the hierarchy of, Muslims, Jews, Christians, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
those who worship Satan. And then I could also understand it if he was like, well, you don't understand normal shit, so we'll do, you didn't want to go the diplomacy route, we'll go the violent route. Which, by the way, that's like,
Yeah.
that's kind of something, like, I hate to say it, but that's something that I kind of do too. Like, I love being nice and charitable and diplomatic and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is the world is filled with bullies. And
Yeah.
when you keep being nice to bullies, they read that as weakness. And oftentimes what will stop bullies is just if you show you have the capacity to put your feet in the ground and say, fucking stop. And oftentimes that's
Yeah.
enough.
Well, two things. A, that quality about you is something I've noticed with a lot of people that have served. Like you're all extremely polite because, you can kill people if you want to. Like you've been trained to do it. So, no skin off your back. You'd rather be polite, but you've got a backup plan. That's just a tendency I've known with people that serve. But do you know what this really reminds me of? Did you ever watch that epic Destiny debate? I think it was the first time he was on Wick. Where Destiny was basically making a whole bunch of really inappropriate jokes about Allah and the Quran and showing the Prophet on Twitter. And he had like Muslims calling in, like legitimately calling for violence and saying they understood violence against him because he had like exceeded some social norm, right? So maybe I think that's probably what he's getting at here. Like the United States doesn't understand manners, meaning these protocols that they have that are very important for like the stability of the society. And then once that's violated, just like Destiny, they said they thought they could go punch him in the face. Very much the same thing.
Well, and here's the thing. I feel this temptation whenever somebody tells me to not do something, or they say I'm being bad, or they say you can't think that, or you can't say that. My impulse is to double and triple down. And obviously,
Right.
like that escalates everything. And I think that the dualist nature of Islam, I don't think as Christians or as agnostics or atheists or liberals or progressives or Jews or whatever, I don't think that it's a reasonable ask from the Muslim world. Here I go collectivizing, you know, a few billion people, but I don't think it's a reasonable ask to ask people outside of the faith to totally bow down to you because, or else we're going to kill you. I don't think that's a reasonable ask.
No,
but what I do think is a reasonable ask is saying like, hey, you guys have a totally different conception on sanctity and belief and reverence and religion and all that kind of stuff. And I would really appreciate it if you didn't go out of your way to antagonize us and appealing to people's like sense of humanity and reciprocity. And I think that there's always going to be a transgressive part of the American spirit just because the First Amendment exists. But I think that we would see less violence if we approach each other as human beings and try to be reciprocal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, like if I went to Kuwait, I would obviously wear a head covering just to be polite and follow, like, you know, the norms of that particular society, right? That's just like not being an a-hole, right? But their objection here is not the way we necessarily communicate with them. It's our entire country, right?
No.
So that's probably. I feel like we've gone really long on this one passage.
Sure.
But, you know, it's. I think this is a insurmountable communication problem that we've honed in on here.
Well, and the good news is we can move on to question 2. Of course, I wanted to see how much was left, so I scrolled too aggressively. But here we go. So, as for the second question that we want to answer, what are we calling you to, and what do we want from you? The first thing is that we're calling you to Islam. Great.
Okay.
All right.
Good luck.
Yeah, the religion of the unification of God, of freedom from associating partners with him, and rejection of this complete love of him, the exalted of complete submission to his laws, and the discarding of all the opinions, orders, theories, and religions which contradict, oh, he's the emperor of mankind, that's interesting, which contradict with the religion he sent down to his prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Islam is the religion of all the prophets and makes no distinction between them, peace be upon them all. Interesting. If we did all convert, then there would be less conflict. That's an interesting appeal. It is.
Yeah. All we gotta do is destroy the Constitution, Connor, and
eliminate liberalism,
yeah.
secularism, become a theocracy. You know,
We're good to go.
Don't
Come
permit
on.
Hinduism or atheism or agnosticism. If we all convert, no problems. Okay, got it. So it is. It is to this religion that we call you, the seal of all the previous religious. It is the religion. Oh, wait, hold on. Did I do this? It is the religion of unification of God, sincerity, the best of manners, righteousness, mercy, honor, purity, and piety. It is the religion of showing kindness to others, establishing justice between them, granting them their rights, and defending the oppressed and the persecuted. It is the religion of enjoining and good and forbidding the evil with the hand, tongue, and heart. It is the religion. It is a religion of jihad in the way of Allah, so that Allah's word and religion reign supreme. And it is the religion of unity. Sorry, I'm having some shoulder pain. The religion of unity and agreement on the obedience to Allah and total equality between all people without regarding their color, sex, or language. Well, also, maybe if we converted, we would be less racist. That's interesting.
There we go.
Maybe that's why progressives like him so much. B, it is the religion whose book, the Quran, will remain preserved and unchanged after the other divine books and messages have been changed. The Quran is the miracle until the day of judgment. Allah has challenged anyone to bring a book like the Quran or even 10 verses like it.
Okay.
No, he lost me there. He lost me on B. Can I explain why real quick?
Go for it. Go for it.
I'll try to be brief. So, Muhammad, when he was reciting the Quran, he was basically saying that, like, if I remember correct, you know, feel free to correct me, Muslims and or progressives and or historians. I don't think that he ever wrote the Quran. I think he dictated it. And so what happened was the coherency of ideas and the coherency of principles start to finish was self-referenced dozens of times throughout the Quran. And it was argued that the continuity and coherence of the belief system was in and of itself evidence of divine revelation. And that the contradictions in other religions were evidence that they were not revealed by God. And so if you could show a book that wasn't contradictory as the Quran, then maybe Muhammad was full of it. But since, peace be upon him, by the way, but since you can't, you know, obviously it's divine word. The reason why I bring this up is because Bin Laden obviously believes this, or at least he believed it enough to put it in his manifesto. So he is calling all the other religions false. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the very nature of it, right? Like this is, I have to say, just bringing it back to Palestine, the more I read this, the more I feel this liberal fantasy of there being a secular democracy, like in place of Jerusalem, with this being like a dual state, right? And people can visit the common land of Jerusalem, since that's important to two religions, and then the rest of it is, basically a big democratic secular state. It's just it's a fantasy. Like if you believe that you want an Islamic state, like all of this is completely incompatible with anyone else existing, right? I mean, it's right here in black and white. This is stunning. I can't wait for the end of this so we can talk about what parts of this progressives could possibly be reading that they are agreeing with, because I'm reading a couple of sentences and that's it. The rest of it is basically religious theocracy.
Yeah, some of it's pretty brutal. But I do have a tangent off of your tangent, but I'm going to resist the urge.
Yeah, okay.
The second thing we call you to is to stop your oppression, lies, immorality, and debauchery that has spread among you. We call you to be a people of manners, principles, honor, and purity, to reject the immoral acts of fornication, homosexuality, intoxicants, gamblings, and tradings with interest. Wow. Okay. We call you to do...
That's going to really hurt the podcast model, because some of them are going for that betting site, whatever it's called.
Yo, but like,
Hard news.
Like, I don't know how progressives read this shit. Anyways, we'll steel man them and straw man them at the end. God, that is brutal.
I didn't even read the homosexuality stuff. Okay,
yeah,
fornication,
what?
No alcohol. I honed it on gambling.
How does that fly with the pro-sex left? What is going on here? Anyways, we call you to all of this, so that you may be freed from that which you have been caught up in, that you may be freed from the deceptive lies that you are a great nation, that your leaders spread amongst you to conceal from you the despicable state to which you have reached. It is saddening to tell you...
Wait. Which one is it? Is the United States, like, I thought we were the ones causing a despicable state all around the world. If you scroll on up, they're blaming us for all the horrors over here. And it sucks for us at home too. We're also a despicable state.
But they're not materialists. So the motivation here is not whether or not you can fornicate or have homosexual sex or drink alcohol or gamble or get wealthy. All of that is apparent to them. But that is part of the debaucherous, Satanist, anti-God behavior that they're trying to call us away from. So,
all right.
Yeah, so you're rich, but you don't realize that you're going to hell, is what I'm hearing. B, it is saddening to tell you that you are the worst civilization witnessed by the history of mankind. All right? That's a little rude, but whatever. No, we are not the worst one. Anyways, we'll talk about that.
The part progressives read and they loved it.
They like that part. Oh yeah, when they heard the West was the worst civilization ever, they were like, yes.
They're like based.
Put that in my veins. Yeah. You are the nation who, rather than ruling by the Sharia of Allah and its constitution and laws, choose to invent your own laws as you will and desire. You separate religion from your policies, contradicting the pure nature which affirms absolute authority to the Lord and your Creator. You flee from the embarrassing question posed to you. How is it possible for Allah the Almighty to create his creation, grant them power over all the creatures of the land, grant them all the amenities of life, and then deny them that which they are most in need of, knowledge of the laws which govern their lives? You are the nation that permits usury, which has been forbidden by all the religions, yet you build your economy and investments on usury. As a result of this, in all its different forms and guises, the Jews, oh, damn it, have taken control, a little anti-Semitic there, have taken control of your economy, through which they have also taken control of your media and now control all aspects of your life, making you their servants and achieving their aims at your expense, precisely what Benjamin Franklin warned you against.
And this was before Jewish people developed their space laser, so it was
Whoa.
about to get a lot worse.
I'm starting to see why Christian conservatives see some redeeming aspects.
Yeah.
But you are a nation that permits the production, trading, and usage of intoxicants. You also permit drugs and only forbid the trade of them, even though your nation is the largest consumer of them. Brianna, do you know where the largest amount of heroin is produced in the world?
I would probably guess Latin America.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan, of course, the poppy seeds. Yes.
And
Fair point.
where was Osama bin Laden based?
There we go. There we go.
But if I had to steelman him, let's say that UBL was just a debate bro streamer, he
He'd be good at it.
yeah, he was selling the vices to the satanic world that would destroy them in order to fund the holy war that would usher in the global Ummah. So he was allowed to sell heroin to the Western world and allowed the Taliban to sell heroin to the Western world because ultimately it was going to fund the holy struggle. That's my presumption of why he allowed his compatriots to mass produce heroin.
Am I remembering this wrong? That the Mujahideen, which was, basically they used to be the quote unquote freedom fighters in Afghanistan before they became the government, didn't they export a huge part of the opium trade to Russia as well? So
There's a belt.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a belt heading westward through Iran of the heroin trade that makes its way into Europe and Russia. And so basically, because we're all Kafirs and Christians and Satanists and hedonists and all that kind of stuff, if we die of heroin, then they just say skill issue. So
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Little hypocritical. Little hypocritical,
but fair. Okay. So, oh God. Okay. You are a nation that permits acts of immorality and you consider them to be pillars of personal freedom. You have continued to sink down this abyss from level to level until incest has spread amongst you, in the face of which you neither your sense of honor nor your laws object. Who can forget your President Clinton's immoral acts committed in the Oval Office? After that, you did not even bring him to account. Other than that, he made a quote-unquote terrible mistake, after which everything passed with no punishment. Is there a worse kind of event for which your name will go down in history and remembered by nations? Dude, this guy killed 3,000 fucking people, and he's worried about Bill Clinton's fucking blowjob. That is mind-blowing.
Hilarious.
And also, I'm pretty sure he had 3 fucking wives, and he had porn on his fucking computer. That is the wildest shit.
That's hilarious. As if Bill Clinton's the only world leader that's getting a little side action. Like, come on. This is...
Yo, like,
oh my God.
This is schizo post. Okay, this is schizo posting, and here's the problem with it: is like, if he wasn't the theocratic leader of a terrorist cell and he put this through like a media department or something, they'd be like, "Yo, you gotta lose the Bill Clinton blowjob paragraph."
Yeah,
like, it totally,
it's not good.
It undermines the rest of your. I'm so happy I'm reading this 10 years after he's dead and 20 years after the 9/11 attack, so I can enjoy that bin Laden posted cringe. What the fuck?
There we go. There we go. Well, now it's everybody's writing these kinds of letters. It's just a Twitter thread. So there we go.
Yeah, this is a twit longer. Okay. Sorry. Let's continue. You're a nation that permits gambling in all its forms. The companies practice this as well, resulting in the investments becoming active and the criminals becoming rich. No objection there. You are a nation that exploits women like consumer products or advertising tools, calling upon customers to purchase them. You use women to serve passengers, visitors, and strangers to increase your profit margins. You then rant that you support the liberation of women. I'm sex negative, so I'm okay with that. You are a nation that practices the trade of sex in all its forms, directly and indirectly. Giant corporations and establishments are established on this under the name of art, entertainment, tourism, and freedom, and other deceptive names you attribute to it. I'm not that sex negative.
We practice trade of sex in all forms. He's talking like there's a Nevada brothel on every corner, like it's Starbucks.
Well, and not just that, but there's
right?
Sports Illustrated models and Max. That Megan Fox is on the front of Maxim and like all that kind of shit, and she's wearing nothing but a blanket. So I'm sure that's what he's talking about.
Under the name of art, entertainment, tour. Okay, that's fair.
And by the way, here's the thing: I'm not that sex negative, okay? But Tell me that you don't see degenerate, furry, lolly, shadow con anime stands on Twitter, and you're like, maybe free speech is a little bit too far. Like, maybe we need to reel it in just a little bit. Maybe we need a few exceptions in here.
There's
Yeah.
a difference between me personally, like, it's really similar to, it's like all these, like the ridiculous percentage of young girls, young women rather, out there now with OnlyFans, right? I
Yeah.
can support your right to do it. That's a very different question than, like, do I think this is a good idea? Because,
Right.
if you're going to go into programming or politics or something else or teaching, maybe that stuff's going to come back to bite you. And
But
maybe it shouldn't, but yeah,
I'm for something that I don't know if you would sign off on, though. So
sure.
I kind of fall into a libertarian philosophy that I am constantly tempted to throw away every hour of the day. But the libertarian philosophy is that if you enact a law that you are going to enforce upon somebody else, what you're really talking about is a man with a gun has to show up and force somebody to do something. And so as a result, laws should be reserved for the most serious of crimes and the most necessary of social interventions. That's the way that I conceptualize like governmental authority and force. And so the reason why, despite not liking, Lolly or Shadow or whatever the fucking degenerate shit that people are doing on Twitter, actually maybe some of the stuff I would ban, but there's things that people do that I think are fucked up for them and fucked up for their lives, but I wouldn't want the authority of the state to become involved because I view that as I'm sending a man with a gun to fuck with you because you're doing something that I don't approve of.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a much longer discussion where we will unpack your libertarian urges as this show continues. I would just say if there's an argument for Lolly not being child porn, just explicit child porn, I've never seen it. So there it is.
Hey, apparently there's a couple of people in Twitch poll who disagree with us, but we'll leave that for another day.
Yeah.
And because of all this, you have been described in history as a nation that spreads diseases that were unknown to man in the past. Go ahead and boast to the nations of man that you brought them AIDS as a satanic American invention. Fuck off. I'm not even going to address that. What a fucking tool. That's not our invention. We just dealt with it the best. That never mind.
That's how viruses work. Anyway, we'll keep going.
Yeah, sorry. We invented AIDS. Go fuck yourself. So you have destroyed nature with your industrial waste. Okay, based. And gases more than any other nation in history. Okay, I'm okay with this. Despite this, you refuse to sign.
That's true, but go ahead.
Well, you refuse to sign the Kyoto Agreement so that you can secure the profit of your greedy companies and industries. I'm like a Teddy Roosevelt Republican. I want the environment to be sustainable. Your law is the law of the rich and wealthy people. Who hold sway in their political parties and fund their elected campaigns with their gifts. Behind them stand the Jews who control your policies, media, and economy. Okay, just had to bring it back to the Jews again.
Yeah.
Just cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks, okay?
I would actually argue in the West, like the rule of law, it's obviously not perfect. It's better to be a rich, guilty person than a poor, innocent one. But yeah, like directionally, like the rule of law in Western democracies has been one of the better implementers, I think, in human civilization. So I would really, I agree with the criticism, but I think it's really underselling the accomplishments that we have.
Biden says something that we have talked in the past about the pragmatic left and right versus like I forget what you called them, but they were kind of like the ideal left and
infinite
right.
leftists.
Yeah, the infinite leftists who will always be more pure than you because they always have the ultimate left-wing idea. And so what I think is important is actually a fantastic quote by Joe Biden, which is, this was when he was running for election in like 1980 or 84 or something like that. He said, "Don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative." And I feel like that's a really sober analysis where you can create your perfect utopia in your head and everybody obeys the laws that you created and all that kind of stuff. You have to think about how societies actually function and how our parallel societies function. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So don't compare yourself to utopia or else you're totally fucked. So That which you are singled out for history, mankind, is that you used your force to destroy mankind more than any other nation in history, not to defend principles and values, but to hasten to secure your interests and profits. You who dropped a nuclear bomb on Japan, even though Japan was ready to negotiate to end the war. How many acts of oppression, tyranny, and injustice have you carried out? Oh, callers to freedom.
All
Low
right,
blow.
got it. So America has just been evil in every situation, always, and
America
only did it.
bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
America bad.
All right. Let us not forget that one of your major characteristics, your duality in both manners and values, your hypocrisy in manners and principles. All manners, principles, and values have two scales, one for you and one for the others. This is like this is like
is the human
pot calling the
condition.
kettle black.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is pot calling the kettle black. You got porn on your computer. You have 3 wives, and you in your terrorist manifesto after murdering 3,000 people, you give a shit about Bill Clinton's blowjob. Like, did he write this like 5 years earlier, and then he just never updated the script? Because that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Anyways,
No, it's just hypocrisy. This is not even worth engaging with.
yeah, it's the nature of humanity. The freedom and democracy that you call to is for yourselves and for the white race only. As for the rest of the world, you impose upon them your monstrous destructive policies and governments, which you call the America's friends, yet you prevent them from establishing democracies. When the Islamic Party in Algeria wanted to practice democracy and they won the election, you unleashed your agents in the Algerian army onto them and to attack them with tanks and guns, to imprison them and torture them. A new lesson from the American Book of Democracy. You can call, I'm okay with this. You can call Americans hypocrites for supporting authoritarian regimes that go against our economic interest. As a matter of fact, I think that's something that we should be called out for. But I also think that you should also look at Japan, Germany, like pretty much all of Western Europe, Eastern Europe after it liberalized, a lot of our trading partners in the Middle East and North Africa who have become incredibly rich and wealthy and successful. I don't think that you can just be like, oh, well, the CIA couped this person fucking 30 years ago, therefore you're always evil.
No, I couldn't agree with that more. Also, just coming back to this, like, freedom and democracy you call for yourselves is for the white race only. I think we'd probably, I hope we'd agree that, when it comes to, like, say, voting rights in the United States, like, we've certainly fallen short when it comes to people of color, like, historically, that's a fair criticism. I'm just really struggling to think of, like, an Islamicist state that's an example of being a real, like, multicultural, like, excellent democracy at letting everyone vote and really, like, protecting the will of the people. That it's really hard to think of examples there, right?
That's an interesting thing. So what I would say is I think America obviously has been wildly imperfect, but I think what you see is the ideals that maybe 19th century and 18th century men put on paper. We have been ever striving to try to complete those ideals more fully. And so as a result, like, you can be like, oh, well, you didn't think of black people as full human beings until the end of the Civil War. And then you still thought of them as subhuman and you treated them as second-class citizens until 1964. And even now there's like all the racism that is probably going on in my chat right now because they think it's funny. And they also, the systemic injustices that we have in our society and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at the arc is always towards improvement. And and then the interesting thing about what you said, though, with whether or not Islamic societies would have ethnic bigotries, what's weird is I would be curious because there are ethnic slaughters, obviously, but I also wonder if the universalism of Islam might reduce the ethnic slaughters, but then increases the religious ones. So when you see the slaughters in Iraq that happened after the invasion, while a lot of people claim that it was not religiously motivated, which I think is bullshit, like, the fault lines for the militias fall between Shia and Sunni. So 60 to 70% of the Iraqi population was Shia. They were oppressed by the Sunni for like all of Saddam's reign. And when the leash came off and the Sunnis were banned from the halls of power, the well-trained Sunni military and government officials, they created militias that they thought they were going to be used for self-defense, but they were co-opted by jihadists. And then they started a tit-for-tat ethnic cleansing of mixed neighborhoods. Ethnic cleansing might not even be the right word. They started a religious cleansing of mixed religion neighborhoods. So I think Osama is comparing the ideal Ummah, the unified Muslim body, rather than Muslims as they actually exist in the real world.
Right, exactly. We've got to argue against his like it's exactly like communists, right? Like we've got to argue against their theoretical perfect future, and we have to talk about our like flawed, imperfect present, right? Because like it's exactly like he says earlier in this piece. Like under his view, like the ideal of Islam is colorblind, right? It's gonna be great for all races. It's just like implementing that is going to be a different thing. So I'm just gonna say, like, I hear the point. I don't think there's a lot of evidence that a system you're proposing is going to be better.
Yeah. B, your policy on prohibiting and forcibly removing weapons of mass destruction to ensure world peace, it only applies to those countries which you do not permit to possess such weapons. As for the countries you consent to, such as Israel, then they are allowed to keep them and as such weapons to defend their security. Anyone else who you suspect might be manufacturing or keeping these kinds of weapons, you call them criminals and you take military action against them. He's mostly talking about Iraq right there, and he's also talking about
Yeah,
North Korea, which I'm okay with Iraq and North Korea not having weapons of mass destruction. Although, ask me about the Rigel report. I will not go into this tangent, but basically we sold Saddam Hussein the precursors for VX gas, anthrax, and botulism and other stuff during the Iran-Iraq war, and the CIA consulted on where to deploy those assets against the Iranian army because we did not want Iraq to lose the Iran-Iraq war. Then we only kind of backed off of dealing with Saddam after he started using it against Shia and Kurdish rebellions in his own country. So
that's exactly right. And look, there's certainly some hypocrisy here. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not. Geostability is about. It doesn't ensure geostability if everyone out there has a nuclear weapon, right? And one of the things we've seen in North Korea is they did develop nuclear weapons, and as a result of that, they did get more power in the region. The United States was forced to take them more seriously. So he's not wrong here, but I also don't disagree with what we were choosing to do here. So there it is.
precisely. You are the last ones to respect the resolutions and policies of international law, yet you claim to want to selectively punish anyone who does the same. Israel has more than 50 years been pushing UN resolutions and rules against the wall with the full support of America. I don't care about this. I think the most powerful people in the United Nations are the United States, Russia, and China, and I don't view Russia and China as moral authorities. So if Russia and China vote to do something fucked up, I'm not going to go along with it just because it's popular.
Correct.
D, as for the war criminals which you censure informed criminal courts for, you shamelessly ask that your own are granted immunity. However, history will not forget the war crimes that you committed against the Muslims and the rest of the world. Those you have killed in Japan, Afghanistan, Somalia, Lebanon, and Iraq will remain a shame that you will never be able to escape. It will suffice to remind you that your latest war crimes in Afghanistan, in which densely populated innocent civilians were now we care about civilians. Interesting.
Right.
Were destroyed, bombed, and dropped on mosques, causing the roof of the mosque to come crashing down on the heads of the Muslims praying inside. I'm sure there were no weapons around. You are the ones who broke the agreement with Mujahideen when they left Kunduz, bombing them in Jangki Fort and killing more than 1,000 of your prisoners through suffocation and thirst. I don't think that happened, but we could Google that later. Allah alone knows how many people have died by torture at the hands of you and your agents. Your planes remain in the Afghan skies looking for anyone remotely suspicious. Again, he's comparing the real American foreign policy, military interventions, and intrigue against the vagaries of a perfect Islamic caliphate. Are we going to pretend for a fucking second that we didn't have jihadists like doing beheadings with dull knives and torturing people and raping people and doing suicide bombings and all that? Are we just ignoring all of that? So again, no you. That would be my argument.
Yeah, that's it. Well, look, I think we would probably both agree. Like when it comes to war crimes, the United States has been we've exercised our power to evade responsibility in a lot of different ways. I think if you look at what was the prison where Muslim people, the cone on the head, and the Abu Ghraib, right? That prison, I don't think we really saw enough accountability for that and the way people were tortured there. So I don't disagree with him here that we should probably participate more in the international process for accountability here, particularly through the UN. But I don't think this is a unique quality of hypocrisy that exists for the United States. It's something we definitely need to do better on.
I could expand, but I'll rant for 5 minutes, so I'm not going to.
Okay. Okay.
You have claimed
This
to be
is
the
going to be the motif of the show all the time.
Yeah. We'll try to reel it in, but we will have
Okay.
difficulty. We're both verbose people. So
Yes.
you have claimed to be the vanguards of human rights, and your Ministry of Foreign Affairs issues annual reports containing statistics of those countries that violate any human rights. However, all these things vanished when the Mujahideen hit you, and you then implemented the methods of the same documented governments that you used to curse. In America, you captured thousands of the Muslims and Arabs, took them into custody with neither reason, court trial, nor even disclosing their names. You issued newer, harsher laws. I think he's just talking about Guantanamo. Yep, literally.
Yeah.
What happens in Guantanamo is a historical embarrassment to America and its values, and it screams into your faces, you hypocrites. What is the value of your signature on any agreement or treaty? Well, the good news is we never signed the Geneva Convention.
9/11 happened after 9/11, so you can't say this is one of the reasons you committed 9/11.
So the reason why I'm a little sympathetic here is not because I think that he's right or wrong. This is like an argument that Sam Harris pointed out that is dangerous with moral equivalency of violence. So what he was talking about is, and this was in reference to the Israel-Gaza conflict. Israel is currently doing a bombing campaign, ground forces, all that kind of stuff. It's going to result in collateral damage and death. But you don't just take the civilian deaths in Gaza, compare it to the civilian deaths of, October 7th, and then you go, oh, well, we killed enough civilians, therefore conflict over. That is not the educated perception of anybody like actively thinking about politics. Because what would happen if you did that is you would reset the players in the game, and these players, Hamas and the people who enabled that massacre, they would continue their political and militaristic objective of destroying Israel and slaughtering civilians, and Israel would, continue its objectives, in my opinion alone, not Brianna's, of slowly pushing its influence in the West Bank and in Gaza, and basically slowly securing their territory.
No, that is my opinion as well.
Yeah. So for me, it's like they'll maintain like the 20 to 30% Muslim population that will go along with Israelis and Jews as a part of their society, and they'll make them citizens and all that kind of stuff. But if you're a fucking jihadist or whatever, then they want to kick you the fuck out, which is like reasonable, but it's also displacement. Anyways, all of that to say, he is making the moral equivalent, saying that CIA case officers are working with locals in order to torture people, while the United States is saying that it is against torture. This is something that we probably do, and there are rumors and stories of CIA black sites where basically like a CIA case officer will show up in order to get the information, but will just pay some local who's trained in torture in order to do the torture. So it's not us doing the torturing, but we're facilitators of it, and we benefit from the information that's taken. As a matter of fact, if you watch like Sicario, which I know is fiction, but Sicario and Sicario 2, they kind of show
still good movies.
They're fantastic movies. They show this phenomena. They at least allude to it. So anyways, I get that he's saying you're a hypocrite because you're actually torturing people when you're saying that torture is bad. But if the outcome of America is a global, wealthy, liberal, free, enlightened, powerful hegemony of humanity, of varied tapestries, getting along together, pushing for the common human good. And then if Osama bin Laden's goal is a completely united, theocratic, authoritarian, ummah, then obviously there's going to be a moral difference between these two that we don't agree on. He thinks this is good. I think it's fucking evil.
Yep.
All right. Back into the mix. We're actually very close. What we call you to thirdly do is to take an honest stance with yourselves, and I doubt you will do so, to discover that you are a nation without principles and manners, and that the values and principles to you are something which you merely demand from others, not that which you must adhere to yourself. Okay, we're hypocrites. I get it. We also advise you to stop supporting Israel and to end your support of the Indians in Kashmir, the Russians against the Chechens, and to also cease supporting the Manila government against the Muslims in southern Philippines, the Moros. We also advise you to pack your luggage and get out of our lands. We desire for your goodness, guidance, and righteousness, so do not force us to send you back as cargo in coffins. Ooh, that's
Jesus.
nice. Spicy. Sixthly, we call upon you to end your support of the corrupt leaders in our countries. Do not interfere in our politics and method of education. Leave us alone or else expect us in New York and Washington. 7, we also call you to deal with us and interact with us on the basis of mutual interests and benefits rather than the policies of the subdual. I think he means like subduing, theft and occupation, and not to continue your policy of supporting the Jews because this will result in more disasters for you. If you fail to respond to...
So support Israel and we will continue killing you. Got it.
If you fail to respond to all these conditions and prepare for a fight with the Islamic nation, the nation of monotheism that puts complete trust in Allah and fears none other than Him, the nation which is addressed by its Quran with the words, do you fear them? Allah has more right than you should fear Him if you are believers. Fight against them so that Allah will punish them by your hands and disgrace them and give you victory over them and heal the breasts of believing people and remove the anger of their believers' hearts. Allah accepts the repentance of whom He wills. Allah is all-knowing, all-wise. The nation, I'm just going to finish this up because honestly, we're like 3 paragraphs out. The nation of honor and respect. But honor, power, and glory belong to Allah and to His messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and to the believers. So do not become weak against your enemy, nor be sad, and you will be superior in victory if you are indeed true believers. The nation of martyrdom, the nation that desires death more than you desire life. Think not of those who are killed in the way of Allah as dead. No, they are alive with their Lord, and they are being provided for. They rejoice in what Allah has bestowed upon them from His bounty, and rejoice for the sake of those who have not yet joined them, but are left behind, not yet martyred, that on them no fear shall come, nor shall they grieve. They rejoice in a grace and bounty from Allah, and that Allah will not waste the reward of the believers. The nation of victory and success that Allah has promised. It is He who has sent His messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him, with guidance and religion of truth, Islam, to make it victorious over all other religions, even though the polytheists hate it. Allah has decreed that verily it is I and my messengers who shall be victorious. The Islamic nation that was able to dismiss and destroy the previous evil empires like yourself, the nation that rejects your attacks, wishes to remove your evils, and is prepared to fight you. You are well aware that the Islamic nation, from the very core of its soul, despises your haughtiness and arrogance. If the Americans refuse to listen to our advice and the goodness, guidance, and righteousness that we call them to, then be aware that you will lose the crusade Bush began. Just like the other previous crusades in which you were humiliated by the hands of the Mujahideen, fleeing to your home in great silence and disgrace. If the Americans do not respond, then their fate will be that of the Soviets who fled from Afghanistan to deal with their military defeat, political breakup, ideological downfall, and economic bankruptcy. This is our message to the Americans as an answer to theirs. Do they now know why we fight them, and over which form of ignorance, by the permission of Allah, we shall be victorious?
Okay. Wow, that was a lot.
Evil,
I guess my
theocratic, kind of a banger.
Yeah. Do you think so? This is schizo posting, exactly like you said. It's crazy. It's rambling. He's copying and pasting like a bunch of parts of the Quran here. Come on.
I disagree. I think that part of the reason why this letter had an influence, and let's just make this a topic of the night, and we can kind of talk our thoughts out, and then if you want to wrap it up, we can wrap it up, and then we can leave the internet anti-Semitism for next time. But
sounds good.
I have a feeling in a week it'll still be a hot topic. So no, I don't think it's schizo posting. I think it's an internally consistent perspective from a utopian view, and also a view that does believe that Islam will rule the world and that it is the correct religion and universal monotheism is the way to go. And so as a result, if you're not a literalist, you just kind of, because all you have to be in order to be a Muslim is you have to believe in God, that Muhammad is his messenger, and believe in the last day. And you can kind of do that in like a very chill way. You can just be like a normal dude, kind of believe in those 3 things, and then just try to be a good person and also do all of the other Muslim things besides like holy war and struggle. You can do that.
Well, you also have to accede to a very specific form of government. So,
well, and what I was going to say is, but there are other Muslims, jihadists in a metaphorical or literal sense, who say that God has said that there will not be peace and the world will not end until the world is united in belief. And so how can we sit here with Christians and Satanists and effectively pagans? Because I would actually argue that the secular West has more in common with pagan Rome than it does the medieval Christian world. And so I think,
I
sorry,
would
go ahead.
need that explained to me. No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and we can make that a topic for a different time. But
Sure.
basically, like, I can see how they would look at the Western world and they would be like, it's debaucherous, it promotes sex, it promotes drugs, it promotes hedonism, it promotes nihilism, it promotes materialism, it promotes all these things that we think take your soul away from God. And so as a result, by allowing these people to run the world, we are effectively dooming millions or billions of souls to death. Now, only God knows the souls and the fate of all involved, but how can the world be united in the Islamic faith if there are not people willing to fight? And when we look at Muhammad and his example, because he fought back in his day, how can we be such cowards that we allow all these people to steamroll us? And so I think it's a relatively coherent worldview.
No, no, I agree with that. I mean, it's a theocratic worldview. Like when I say
Mm-hmm.
it's a schizo posting, what I mean here is, like we said when we were reading it, badly needs an editor, a lot of tangents, a lot of like, not even an attempt to like put
Honestly,
forward
I would take out the
information
Bill Clinton.
neutrally.
I would take out
Yeah,
that
the Bill
paragraph and then
Clinton
I would
thing,
leave
like it
it.
was funny. It was
It was-
funny,
I
but
would leave that. Like I'd get rid of that, and then everything else was okay. If you're an Islamic theocrat jihadist,
if that is your worldview. And I want to be clear. Yeah, I'm Presbyterian. Like I'm a religious person, but yeah, I'm not a theocrat. I don't want to like, have my religion enforced on everyone else. So like there are parts of this that do remind me of American theocrats, right? They have certain views that they want to see reflected through, the laws and the state, and basically getting rid of things that they don't like, which tend to be in the realm of sex and sexual liberation. I so I understand where he's coming from with this, and there's no surprises there. I think the part that I'm really, really struggling with is trying to understand why so many progressives on TikTok were reading this and were A, shocked by any of it, because nothing here is truly shocking, or B, like what they identified with. Like the majority of this is about theocratic control. You've got, a bunch of anti-Semitism. You've got him stating again and again, like he wants Israel to be destroyed. It cannot exist. The United States needs to repent and become a theocratic state, exactly like he wants, and that's the only hope for us. Like, other than some like progressive platitudes about environmental destruction and us not being a particularly completely great partner on with international crimes being prosecuted, things like that, I don't really see much meat here that I latch onto as a progressive. So I just kind of
I can explain it.
I don't know what the fuck they're sorry to swear, but I don't know what they're thinking of.
Well, so I think the main things that people are latching onto is I had a relatively religious experience by going into the military, and so what I mean by that is I started with what I believe to be true. I was disabused of my truth. I had to find my foundation again. And then I had to build my faith up from scratch based off of what I believe to be true. And now I feel like, relatively speaking, I'm standing on solid ground. I think that what these people dealt with is, I remember in 2003, 2004, I was in high school, and we heard weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. Iraq supports Al-Qaeda.
Yep.
Iraq supports Al-Qaeda. There's Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They're ready for us. They have trucks that are going into Syria that are filled with weapons of mass destruction, et cetera, et cetera. And it's largely an accepted narrative nowadays that at least parts of the Bush administration knew that the weapons of mass destruction was largely built on bullshit and justified the war. And so this killed a couple 100,000 Iraqis at minimum. And it also...
100,000 is the lowest estimate that is credible. It's probably much higher.
Right. So you have few 100,000. If you're saying like 400,000 was the lowest, so you have
100. If I'm remembering correctly, 100,000, 120,000 was the lowest estimate, and the highest estimate I believe
was like
that is credible
1.5.
It was more like 400 if I'm remembering correctly, but it's been a while since I
But
checked
even
that.
if we just think about this from a consequentialist lens, because we're trying to pretend to have the IQ, like an 80 level of IQ.
Sorry, consequentialist lens. Define that to me really quickly.
So for me, I haven't studied consequentialism. I'm just going out of my ass
Sure.
right now. But what I would say is that you don't analyze actions based off of their intent. You analyze actions based on their consequences.
Okay,
So
I like that. Yeah.
yeah. So what I would say is that the American empire, whatever you want to call it, George Bush might have had the intent of creating a prosperous, multi-ethnic, multi-religious Iraq that became a beacon of freedom in the Middle East and North Africa. But that doesn't matter because the situation on the ground and the tools he used in order to achieve that goal were totally like not capable of achieving that dream. And so instead of analyzing his intent, which could be noble, we should analyze his consequences, which is a few 100,000 dead, $2 trillion spent, and 20,000 American service members dead.
Sure.
Yeah. So the point being that, like, I think that through that lie and the tortures in Guantanamo Bay and the tortures in Abu Ghraib and the drone program and the civilians, if you add up all of America's sins, then it makes sense why somebody would hate us. Whereas if you turn on news, it's because we're too free and too wealthy. They hate us because they ain't us.
So basically, America bad. That's what it's coming down to. That's what they're latching onto here.
I'm tired, so I'm just going to go, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Oh my God. This was a really fun first show, I think.
Mm-hmm. I had a blast. I need a green screen and I need lights that aren't as hot so I don't get cooked in my room. But besides that,
we also, I think we need to record, I don't know, let's find some other time before next Friday and do another one of these because this is fun and I want to get to all the rest of the topics. But
Sure.
like you is 10:30 at night and I'm crashing.
Sure. No, 100%. Then just for the sake of, we're starting this thing. We've planned on doing this thing for a while, but Brianna's very busy. She's running packs. She's rubbing elbows with, you know, nice, famous people and all that kind of stuff. She's making moves.
Some money. I'm trying to make money. There we go.
She's making moves. She's playing into the Satanist, materialist, Western stuff that we were just criticizing for the past 2 hours. So
yes.
But I also want people to get familiar with you as we develop the content. So is there anything that you want the audience to be aware of before we sign off?
No, just, you know, I suspect that a lot of people out there, they probably have a little bit of a different background than I have. And, you know, part of the reason I want to do this show is just speaking really honestly, conservatives, I think, are, it's my experience that conservatives really appreciate liberals and progressives who will show up, talk to you with respect, and like really hear where you're coming from. So, you know, just as Connor, you and I start doing the show together, I hope your audience will embrace me and we will, you know, learn things from one another. I remember when I was, you know, when I was a very young staffer in Mississippi and, you know, I started to kind of move more over to the left. It helped me a lot. Like I had all these ideas of who the left was from, you know, Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity telling me, but I didn't actually know leftists. So getting to read books by like Al Franken and things like that really helped define my worldview. So I hope to be someone that is not out there psycho tweeting praise of bin Laden and is truly primarily interested in policy like healthcare and, you know, better earnings for working class people. And maybe we can find a way forward together. That is my hope.
Weirdly enough, and I'll try to wrap it up, but weirdly enough, I think it's more needed than ever. We look at how the algorithms are capturing attention. We look at how people are being cruel and evil and mean and tribal, and it's not just resulting in like hurt feelings; it's resulting in injury and death. And I've been kind of watching this like slow moral political collapse of the American system for the past like decade. And it's been an absolute horror show because you, relatively speaking, see what's going to happen. And then it just keeps happening right in front of your face at a very slow rate. And so yeah, I think we need to change the tide so to speak. But it
I
was
think
fun.
the axis of conflict is not right versus left as much as it is people that want less violence and people that want more. People that want the system to work and be improved and people that want to burn it down, you know. And I think the reasons we are friends is I think both of us feel a deep responsibility to do what we can for our country, and I think we want to make it better. So I think this is going to be a good conversation.
A final quote. A woman asked Ben Franklin, you know, like, what fresh hell have you gotten us into? And like, what have you given us? And he said, a republic, if you can
If you
keep
can
it.
keep it.
And that's, I want to pass it down. I want to pass it down to my son. So yeah.
100%, 100%. Talk soon, Connor. Are you going to keep streaming or can we talk offline?
I'm gonna wrap it up. So give me 120 seconds just to say goodbye to chat.
Just check your phone. No, I'm going to crash. Check your phone. I'm going to text you something really important. So talk soon, okay?
Sounds great. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hang out with you. I want to read super chats. I want to do XYZ ABC. I'll scroll up and see if there's any super chats that are still in the chat. I'm sorry if I ignored you, but basically I had to, like, you know, kind of run the show, flip between software programs and read the letter and all that kind of stuff. But I hope you really enjoyed it. And I hope that this does well, because while we will have spirited debates in the future, I guarantee you, like Brianna and I do not agree on everything 100%. And she comes from a different political persuasion and I come from a different political persuasion, at least as far as like our first principles. And so I think this is going to be really good. But what I really liked about tonight and what I really hope continues to go forward is Brianna, if you can't tell, at least from what I can tell, she is intelligent. She is analytical. She's paying attention to the information that's being presented to her. She seems to me giving her frank, honest opinions. Now, maybe they're a little bit more rhetorically couched than when I just get angry and I go on a 20-minute profanity-laden spurg rant. But I think that these are the kind of insights that I hope, while maybe not being as spicy as just like cussing and calling people subhuman assholes and pieces of shit, I hope it gives you guys some solace that not everybody on the internet is an absolute fucking psychopath hell-bent on destroying the world. So I really appreciate you. Grassroots Hegemons for $2 says, fly planes, get brained. Indeed. Astronaut Farmer says, Allahu Akbar, bitch. Indeed. God is the greatest. True. True, King. I appreciate it. Then, scrolling. My brain is soup at this point. Then he went to get Warhammer minis and never came back. True. Hopefully Connor reads YouTube chat after he never checks in on the kids in this daycare. I'm sorry about that. You know, I just had to run all the software programs. So yeah, and then also Christian Valeris is right. I normally read chat afterwards. I'm okay with you know, being around for another couple of minutes, but I'm eager to crash and I'm eager to check whatever she texted me. So I hope it's, hey, Connor, here's $100,000. Let's do the show full time. So I didn't like Mrs. Wu, but after talking to Mr. Connor, I get her stance. Good. Good. You don't have to like a different part of a show. So for instance, like I've been watching the commentary videos because frankly, the real world is so depressing that watching Augie RFC, Nicholas Diorio, Flamenco TV, Tipster, and all Bo Blacks and all that kind of stuff. Watching all of them, Mudahar, Keemstar, all those people, watching them just talk about like stupid, inane. Let me go full cam. Watching them talk about stupid, inane drama is honestly like it heals my soul. So I hope that we're healing your souls as well. You don't have to like somebody in order to be entertained by them. As someone who went from Shapiro to Demon Mama and Vosh to moderate, finally an actually honest and intelligent leftist, Brianna. Yeah, I don't know if she's a socialist or a communist, but yeah, she's a good person. So counterpoints, if you watch Game of Thrones, what kingdom would be Space Marine Legion like House Stark would be Space Wolves or like Dark Angels? We can do that. Ask me on a different stream and I'll happily do that. Obviously, Ramsay Bolton is going to be Night Lords. House Bolton's going to be Night Lords. House Frey or the not the Starks. Who are the... Anyways, DM me. But basically, like, you can come up with one-to-one analogies for all the houses. Stannis Baratheon is 100% either the Iron Hands or... He's a combination of the Iron Hands and the Imperial Fists. 100%. Baratheons are defensive experts. And they're fucking units and tanks. So counterpoints. Yeah. So great stream, bro. Thank you, Victard Lith. I appreciate you. It's a great duo. Thank you. We're going to be doing it more often. It was fun. Thank you, Jonah Boy. The beard and hair make you look like a goddamn hunk. Save some chicks for the rest of us. Well, I'm married, so the good news is all the other chicks are yours. A joke to take the edge off. What do you call coming in a woman? Loading the dishwasher. Good night. Thank you, Christian Valeris. What do you... a lot of people will say, happy wife, happy life. Have you ever heard the male version of it? This is something that I got from Critically Thinking Veteran. Happy husband or I'll fuck your cousin. Hey, Counterpoints viewers, not trying to advertise, especially for something that doesn't exist yet, but would anyone be interested in non-political debate show? If so, then say yes in chat for harmony. Find unity in division. Yes. God is good. God is great. True. Big money, no whammy. True. Sargon was good at making villains out of people. Indeed. Indeed. Turkey Tom is my boy. I can't believe I didn't even mention Turkey Tom. Yeah, he's fantastic. He's a little dry and analytical, but I think that's what keeps him afloat is the fact that he doesn't get down into the mud with the pigs as much. I still very much enjoyed his tipster rap song. It was a little mean, but it was very funny. Behind every strong man is a strong woman. Yeah, my wife kick somebody's fucking ass. Absolutely. Behind every strong woman is an unemployed skater. True. True. That's actually weirdly true. There are simps for women of all stripes who wait in the weeds hoping that they're preying on your downfall, which is why you can't slip. Connor, have you seen Shane Gillis' comedy special, Beautiful Dogs? I haven't, but I love Shane Gillis. I love all his clips. So... yeah. All right. Well, thank you to the 40 to 50 people who hung out with us on YouTube. Thank you to the 10 to 20 people who hung out with us on Twitch. I understand that there's bigger fish out there, but I hope that you had a fantastic time. I hope you see us. We'll try to be back next week. But I hope you come back next week in order to do something similar. And I parasocially love you guys. It was a beautiful night. It was very fun. I'm going to roll with dad jokes. What do you call gonorrhea for a handicapped person? Slow clap. Nice. All right. Parasocial love to you and yours. Thank you for coming. Have a fantastic night. Bye for now. See you in the next one.